Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to Lakers post-trade deadline Q&A. It was a uneventful end to the trade deadline for the Lakers, but obviously an A-plus trade deadline for the Lakers, acquiring Luka Doncic, Mark Williams, and Dorian Finney-Smith to take it back to December 29th, and outgoing Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Max Christie, Dalton Connect, both of their tradable first-round picks in 2029 and 2031, a 2030 pick swap, and 4 second-round picks. So Lakers gave up a lot. They mortgaged a lot of their present and part of their future for a new present and future. And I think all things considered, especially when factoring in the price that they gave up for Luka and being able to keep Dalton, keep the second 2031 pick, they're just, it was about as well as was realistically possible. And I would even say even better than seemed to be realistically possible, because no one thought Luka Doncic was going to be available. I'd even say with Mark Williams, there had not been a lot of buzz. And my understanding, as I'm reporting out at The Athletic, was like this was something that came together in the last 48 hours. The Lakers made an aggressive offer and pried Mark Williams away from Charlotte. So Lakers' new roster, starting lineup for now, I would say, is Mark Williams, LeBron, Rui, Austin, and Luka. I do think DFS should replace Rui in the starting lineup, but for now, I am penciling in Rui just based on JJ's use of him and his fondness of him. So you got that; those are the starting 5: Mark Williams, LeBron, Rui, Austin, Luka. And then the bench: DFS, Vando, Gabe Vincent, Jackson Hayes, Shake Milton, Maxi Kleba, who's out for at least 8 more weeks, Markieff Morris, Christian Wood, and Bronny James. That's the Lakers' 14 players. They have an open roster spot to pursue a free agent or a buyout market guy. And really just looking at the roster, I think I really like the top 8. I'm I think a little bit lower on Jackson Hayes in like a playoff like contention standpoint, but he has been playing better. So we'll see if that can carry over and how that translates the rest of the season. We haven't seen him with Luka yet. Like Luka could make him really good or look really good, at least on the offensive end. But so we'll even throw Jackson in there as like the top 9. I do really like the Lakers top 9. Obviously spots 10 through 14 are still a bit shaky. You got 2 injured guys in Kleba and Wood. Bronny is not ready for rotation minutes. And then it kind of comes down to Shake Milton and Markieff Morris. Keefe is not really a rotation guy either at this point. So Shake's had a couple of nice performances recently for the Lakers, but overall he's been very uneven and I think a bit of a defensive liability, and offensively hasn't quite found a consistent role yet. So I look like, to me, it's top 9 guys. Ideally for the Lakers, if they add a free agent or buyout guy, that player can be better than Shake and slot him as like the 11th guy, and that guy step into the top 9 or 10. But it is hard to find quality guys in free agency at this point in the season, and on the buyout market at this point in the season. The Lakers, as a first apron team, are limited in terms of their optionality, where they cannot sign a guy making more than $12.8 million. So actually, I mentioned, someone asked me if I'd like Schroeder last night, and I said, I would potentially be open to it depending on who the options are. But actually, he's making $200,000 more than the threshold. So the Lakers are like, he's ineligible to be. And it seems like he's staying in Detroit. He got rerouted to Detroit, and they're going to keep him. But had he become available, he's a guy that the Lakers couldn't have signed. A Bruce Brown, a Ben Simmons, like any of the kind of the more prominent buyout candidates that people have thrown out there. Those guys are all making above that 12.8 million, and the Lakers cannot sign them if they become bought out and are available. So that's just something to note. But quickly, again, my grade for last night's Mark Williams trade, somewhere between a B plus and an A minus. I think clear pros are like, this dude is so much better than Jackson Hayes. It properly slots the rotation, and they get a player who's 7 foot. Some places list him at 7'2", some places list him at 7. I think he's technically 7'2" with shoes on, but 9'9" standing reach, the tallest standing reach ever recorded in NBA draft combine history. 2 inches taller than Victor Wembanyama. He is a dynamic vertical finisher and lob threat. He averages about 3 dunks per game, over 1 alley-oop finish per game, and just from that perspective, like, is going to be an awesome fit with Luka, LeBron, and Austin in the pick and roll. Has some playmaking chops sneakily, despite being more of just that kind of traditional like rim running athletic big. Good offensive rebounder, good defensive rebounder, solid shot blocker, but overall his rim protection and the flip side is the Lakers paid a hefty cost to get him. The defense leaves much to be desired. In watching his defensive film, it is rather rough. Like, guys can go through him, around him. He will block shots, and if he has the time to kind of gather himself, set himself up, and be big and use his verticality, he can block and alter shots. But there are plenty of times where guys just beat him on the perimeter, or he struggles with stretch bigs, or he struggles with stronger bigs in the post. So I think the defensive side, he's clearly below average, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And then there's also the injury history. He's only played in 85 games through his first 2.5 seasons in the NBA, and has dealt with multiple injuries. However, I think as long as Lakers can keep him healthy, which I think is the biggest factor here, like, he should be better defensively in LA. I think in a more serious winning environment, with the way that the Lakers have been able to develop guys. So, like, I think Max Christie showed a lot of growth from the beginning of the season till now, and you saw that within certain younger guys within the rotation. Like, I think they could coach up Mark Williams to be better defensively. And again, the alternative was Jackson Hayes, and I think like, when people kind of look and just the center market in general, what was uninspiring, you can make a case Mark Williams was the best center moved in this trade cycle. Like, it's not much competition. It's like Jonas Valanciunas or Yusuf Nurkic. So I think all things considered, LA did I called it last night, like a double or a triple. And then the trade deadline in general was a grand slam. A+. No, like, they went for it. They put the picks on the table. They put their young players on the table. They made aggressive win now moves that also set them up for the future. Mark Williams is 23, Luka's 25. So those two can play together for the rest of the decade into the early 2030s. And like, obviously Mark Williams has to hold up physically, but my understanding is that the Lakers don't have concerns. They did their due diligence, and they're confident that, with their new medical staff, they'll be able to keep him healthy. And there's no like real red flags there. Obviously the injury history is a red flag, but like, none of the specific injuries are concerning longer term. So with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. I see we got some super chats. First one from Jonathan Frazier. Jaden Springer would be a great pickup for us. Just got waived by Houston. Also 7 straight videos with a smiling thumbnail. Let's go, Jovan. Yeah, there's been a lot to smile about. Lakers winning, making good trades. A lot of positivity in Lakerland right now. I do like Jaden Springer. I've not really gotten a sense yet in terms of the buyout market and who's going to be available and what the Lakers are looking for. I do know they are looking for a shooting guard. Like, ideally a 2.5 is the type of player they want positionally. One name that was thrown out last night on the stream that we kind of talked about in the Q&A portion was Josh Richardson, and he was just waived by the Jazz. They also waived JHS, which is pretty wild. Like, I assume someone will pick up JHS again at some point, because guys drafted where he's drafted are usually not out of the league within less than 2 seasons. But it is wild that JHS is a free agent less than 2 seasons in. Like, he's been traded and waived less than 2 seasons into his career. And part of it's certainly the injury stuff, but it's not just that. Like, if you have an injured young player that you believe in or see the talent or potential in, like, you keep that player. Clearly the Lakers and now the Jazz, like, don't see that in him. And that's something that's a bit discouraging. But yeah, I mean, a lot of positive stuff. I do like Springer, and he didn't really play. Let me pull up his numbers. He didn't really play much in Boston, and I know I believe Bill Simmons was tweeting about wanting him to play a bit. But let's see, he's only played. I mean, he was mainly a garbage time guy there, but defensively, he's good. And the shooting, yeah, I mean, it might be worth a gamble, but I do wonder if they could get a better player than that. But to your point about the thumbnails, there's been a lot to smile about lately. Lee Baggy, thank you for the super chat. If Dennis signed that extension with the Lakers, he wouldn't be getting passed around like this. Yeah, that's a sliding doors moment for Dennis Schroeder. Should have taken the 4 years, $80 million. Like I think we've seen now with guys when you have a certain bag on the table. I think a lot of guys, like, it makes sense why guys bet on themselves, because you obviously don't want to like sell yourself short, and you got to make that calculation the right way. But they're like, this is one of many bag fumbles in NBA history, and really one for him that like could have had generation. I mean, still has generational money, but like a different level of it. And instead he's been more of like a vet minimum or mid-level type player since then. Rama's Aviation, thank you for the super chat. So happy for Rob. Traded both picks and half the team. I think we're a top 3 seed. Also, the guys we sent aren't reliable in the playoffs outside of AD. I agree with you. I would, my pushback here would just be like, we haven't seen Max in a playoff setting, but Max has already looked good in Dallas. I think Max is going to be a pretty good 3-and-D starting caliber player, and I think Max would have been fine. I'm sure there would have been a bit of a learning curve, or like with the nerves and the moment in the spotlight, like he might have made some mistakes or had some inconsistent performances. But I also think Max's defense and shooting would have translated, and he would have been. I think Max would have been a reliable playoff performer for LA had they kept him. To your point about Rob, I think Rob deserves a lot of credit. I said it last night. Like I've tried, like I've been critical about not participating in the previous 3 trade cycles, but if they had, they would not have gotten Luka Doncic. They would not have gotten Mark Williams. So, of course, like hindsight's 2020, and you can say now the smart thing was waiting. And I don't think they had some grand master plan to get Luka Doncic back in like 2023 offseason, or at least get him in the way that they got him. But being patient and waiting out the market and being opportunistic worked out. And he deserves a lot of credit. He had a stellar, excellent trade deadline. As I said, Lakers, I would give them an A+ at the deadline, or just like this trade cycle. And Rob has gotten a lot of flack. He's gotten a lot of criticism. Some of it deserved, some of it not. But he deserves as much praise as anyone for this whole situation. Did a masterful job negotiating with Nico Harrison and managing that situation and maximizing the value of what they gave up to get Luka. I think with the Mark Williams situation, made an aggressive offer that you could potentially classify as a slight overpay. But even so, the Lakers desperately needed a center upgrade. And I believe it's okay to overpay if you really need, if you have a positional need that like the different, I think the Lakers ceiling difference, like starting Jackson and even having Dalton as your 9th man versus starting Mark Williams and not having Dalton as your 9th man, like I think there's a huge ceiling difference there in terms of regular season and playoffs for the Lakers. So I think like kudos to Rob. I think he deserves a lot of praise for this deadline. In terms of top 3 seed, I would say I currently have the Lakers as, 1 second, I'm putting on my do not disturb. No, the trade deadline's passed, so I could take a little bit of break from all the texts I've been getting. But the one thing I will note is that the Lakers have the 7th toughest remaining schedule. They have a brutal, I've said it several times, like they have a brutal late February to late March stretch. You know what? I'll just I'll pull it up for you guys, and let's go. screen share this. So let's go through it. So the Lakers, Golden State tonight, Indiana, Utah. Coming out of the All-Star break, they have Charlotte at Portland back-to-back. And then this is where things get crazy. So look at this. At Denver, home versus Dallas, home versus Minnesota, play the Clippers twice, New Orleans, New York, at Boston, at Brooklyn, at Milwaukee, at Denver, home Phoenix, home San Antonio, home Denver, home Milwaukee, home Chicago, at Orlando, at Indiana, at Chicago, at Memphis. So like, and then Houston, Golden State, New Orleans, OKC, Dallas, Houston, Portland. So like, I mean, there's some easy games in there, like Chicago, Portland, New Orleans, Brooklyn, but you're talking Denver 3 times, Milwaukee twice, Memphis once, Minnesota once, Houston twice, OKC twice, Golden State a couple times, Dallas a couple times. Like the Lakers have a really challenging schedule moving forward here. So I say all that to say, like, I have them top 3 in the West in terms of like winning the conference. I still think there's a chance maybe they end up being the 4th or 5th seed based on where they're currently at in the West and based on how tough their remaining schedule is. But in terms of like coming out of the conference, I easily have them as a top 3 team, and argue like I'm still debating whether I want to put them as high as number 2. So I'm largely in agreement with you here. Rolla, thank you for the super chat. Mark Williams, 15th pick versus Kessler, 22nd pick, first round. Yeah, I mean, like I said it last night, Walker Kessler's a better player. Like there's just no doubt about it, because even if you want to make, like, he's a better finisher technically, but even if you want to, like, I think you can make a legitimate case that Mark Williams is a better offensive player. He's got more skill, a bit more touch around the rim, and you know, like more of a bag, and then offensively also just his basketball IQ and the passing reads and stuff. Like I think you can make a case he's a better or like more impactful, effective like offensive player. But there's a huge gap between these two guys defensively. Walker Kessler is a top 5 shot blocker and rim protector in the league. Mark Williams is not. Walker Kessler is almost like a defense unto himself. Mark Williams is not. So yes, he went ahead of him. And again, I think the Mark Williams trade makes a lot of sense. And like, I think it was a smart move by the Lakers, but I don't think they would have gotten Kessler for that price. And I think Kessler's, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, other than maybe just comparing where they were taken in the draft. But I think Kessler's still a notably better player. Angelco, Azorad Rezo, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, what do you think, or who do you think, by brain processing, my basketball IQ right now is not very high with how little sleep I've gotten. Who do you think will end up in the Lakers open roster spot? Thanks. I think, I mean, again, I think that they're looking at a 2 guard from what I've been told, that they kind of view that spot as the one hole in the roster right now, because at point guard you have Luka, LeBron, and Austin, 3 guys who can all play point guard, be the primary ball handler, and you still have Gabe technically who can be like a backup point guard, bench 3-and-D guard. Shooting guard, it'll probably be Austin to start, and then you also could have Gabe slot in there. But I think that like then you get to Shake, you get the Bronny. I think they want to improve that spot. And then front court, like, I mean, you got Mark Williams, Jackson Hayes, potentially Christian Wood if he comes back, potentially Maxi Kleber if he comes back. Like I think for now they're fine at the center spot. They could also go small if they really want to, and I suspect JJ will continue to go small. And then at the forward spots, you could go LeBron, DFS, Vando, Rui, and even Luka obviously can play forward defensively. So you've got 5 guys there. You could also really, I mean, if you really want to, you could play 2 big lineups. I don't think Williams and Jackson, like the spacing together is a little funky, but maybe if Christian Wood or Maxi Kleber does get healthy at some point this season, those guys can space the floor, stretch big. So you could see those guys potentially play next to Mark Williams or Jackson in certain matchups. I don't think it would be like an every night, every matchup type thing. So I think the Lakers have a lot of optionality and versatility, but clearly that 2 guard spot of like having another guy in that like 6'4" to 6'6" range who can ideally defend either backcourt spot and ideally be like a decent shooter at least. Like you got to be decent, either decent shooter, like solid defender, or solid shooter, decent defender, like basically a 3-and-D guy, but it's going to have to be slim pickings relatively. Josh Richardson is a name I'm interested in. One thing with him, he's only played 8 games this season. The numbers have been rough. He's shooting like under 30% on threes, under 30% overall. So small sample size, like maybe it's just kind of been one of those years to start. And if you put him in the right situation, he could be a 9th or 10th man. But I think right now that there aren't a lot of great options for the Lakers. So I think they're gonna be patient and see what shakes loose in terms of like teams are still evaluating their rosters, their cap sheets. That there could be guys that become available that we aren't necessarily expecting. But I think if they do add someone, it will likely be a shooting guard or like a wing, but trying to get more of a shooting guard. Rolla, again, thank you for the super chat. ESPN has the Lakers as the favorite to beat the Nuggets at Denver after the Williams trade. Yo, you think Celtics will be a major problem for us in the finals? Yeah, the Lakers have vaulted according to several draft books or betting books. Again, by reading by critical thinking right now is rough, but the Lakers have jumped to like the number 2 or 3, best odds to come out of the West in a lot of betting books. I don't have an issue with that. Like I largely agree with that. Them being favored to beat Denver in Denver is interesting. I don't know if I'd go that far yet without at least seeing what this group looks like fully formed with Luka and Mark Williams. But hey, like it shows you how highly people view the Lakers right now. And I do think that the Celtics would be a tough matchup. You can slot Tatum and Brown on each of Luka and LeBron. And then it's not like Austin's getting a cakewalk either. You put Drew Holiday or Derek White on him. Then you have Porzingis as a rim protector. So Boston, I still think like when fully healthy is the best team in the league. And they have the best 5-man unit in the league. But LeBron has his history and beef with Boston. Luka has his history and beef with Boston. And those 2 guys are capable of being the best players in that series. Like I think Luka is clearly the best player in the series, but if LeBron outplayed Tatum in a playoff series, it wouldn't be like shocking necessarily. So I think that gives the Lakers a shot against them. But I for now, for me, I still would favor Boston in my opinion. Stephanopoulos, thank you for the super chat. What's the vibe you get from the remaining Lakers in the locker room? Front office has been all about Luka, understandably, but curious how AR, Rui, etc. are feeling. We haven't been in the locker room since the Clippers game. And as I said after that game, like it was a bit of a sullen, somber vibe. The guys were a bit down despite winning the game and having won 9 of 11. Like I think losing AD and Max was a gut punch to this group. And I'm sure losing Dalton, a guy that everyone is sort of like the one like primary, Bronny's of course a rookie, but like the kind of the primary like rotation rookie that everyone rallied around. And I think had a lot of people, fond of him in that locker room. So we'll get another vibe with it tonight. It will be their first home game in basically 2 weeks. It will be the first time Luka is at crypto.com as a Laker. So I think there'll be some positivity and optimism and like excitement about Luka being there, about Mark Williams and like that trade. But yeah, I think they're going through it. Like JJ called it a grieving process. I think guys are still processing everything, but now I also think there will be an element of relief because all these guys are going to be Lakers through the rest of the season. Like none of the, barring maybe Christian Wood or something like that getting waived, like these guys are going to be Lakers, and there's a sigh of relief in terms of like, okay, I'm not getting traded. I don't have to potentially pack my bags. I don't have to worry about that. Like the roster is the roster. They could potentially add one more guy. But outside of that, like everyone can kind of breathe and say, okay, we're Lakers for at least until the summer. Rolla again, thank you for the super chat. Williams might be better offensively than Kessler. Yeah, I mean, from a production perspective, he is. Like Kessler's field goal percentage is higher. The finishing around the rim is a little bit higher, also percentage wise. But Mark Williams has like he's got more range as like a hook. Like he could post guys up and hit hook shots over them, hit floaters. I think he's got more skill out of the short roll and just as a playmaker and passer overall. And he does have a higher standing reach than the Kessler, and I think you could argue like has more of a is more of a target in the air than Kessler. So I like between the two, I would lean more Williams offense. Like I think he's probably the better offensive player, but defensively, I think whatever gap there is offensively is not the same as the gap defensively. There's a much larger gap defensively. Next one from Josh DeVera. Thank you for the super chat. Jovan, do you think Luka and AD trade happens still if Luka and AD were both healthy and playing? Nico still think of this trade if Luka healthy? It's a good question. It's also like I hadn't really thought of it. What's interesting with this is I had thought of like each player being injured in like a vacuum and kind of in its own like context, but not directly related, right? So like both guys were injured technically when they were traded for one another. I don't think AD being injured affected things on the Lakers side. If anything, I think it potentially like could have been a minor like hold up in the deal or delay, because you got to make sure AD like didn't tear something. Like if AD tore his abdominal, I don't think Dallas is trading for him, right? So they had to do MRIs and kind of like make sure AD was okay and it wasn't a serious injury. So I think if anything, that was potentially a like could have been a snag in the deal. And then of course on the Lakers side, making sure Luka's calf was okay. They weren't inheriting a guy like about to suffer a major injury or be out much longer. Like Luka had already been targeting returning by Saturday, and that seems to be the plan as of right now. So I mean, I can't speak to the Dallas side as well because I don't know Nico. I'm not as plugged in on the Dallas side. It seems like though this was a bigger picture thing that had been brewing, like just some of the stuff that's come out that they've said about Luka, going back to the viral clip from the conference final celebration where Michael Finley takes Luka's beer after the game. Like this seems to have been something that was brewing and that was going to get to this point, whether it was now or potentially over the summer or next season. So I think they probably would have traded him anyway. I wonder if maybe you, like, depending on how he was playing and healthy, like, could you have maybe demanded more in that case? And you know, because I think part of my understanding is like part of what like when the Lakers were negotiating and when they were able to lower the price a bit compared to what it could have been, it was factoring in Luka's health and some of the weight. Like they're able to kind of use Dallas's reasons for trading him against them. And part of that being the injury. So I actually wonder if Luka was healthy, maybe the Lakers have to give up both picks or throw in Dalton or a swap or something. And then maybe that limits their ability to go get a Mark Williams. Or they end up just giving more in the Luka trade, less in the Williams trade, and they still get Williams. Like we'll never know. But it is an interesting like what if as to like how things changed depending on like the health of those two guys. Ryan Mitchell, thank you for the super chat. Offseason, Gabe plus Maxey expiring contracts. Who to get? So this is, I'm going to pull up, I will show you guys Lakers cap situation for next season. Let's pull it up here and screen share. Apologies for those listening and not watching, but I am pulling this up now. So for next season, you got LeBron at $52.6 million. He has a player option, but we'll see what he ends up deciding this summer in terms of opting out or trying to extend or opting out, re-signing or whatever he decides to do. Luka at just under 46 million, Rui at 18.3 million as an expiring. DFS has a $15.4 million player option. I think he's going to opt out and try to, he's either going to try and extend or opt out and re-sign with the Lakers. Austin, 13.9 million, technically non-expiring, but has a player option for the following year. So it's kind of an expiring. And if anyone's trading for Austin, it's with his future in mind in terms of knowing that he's probably going to opt out in 2026 and you're going to try and extend him or re-sign him. Vando, 11.6. He'll still have 2 more years on that deal. So I still think, unless like the Lakers win a championship or go really far in the playoffs with Vando being like a huge part of it, I think he's probably going to have negative to neutral value still with 2 more years left and an extensive injury history. But we shall see how the rest of the season goes. Gabe as an expiring 11.5, Maxey as an expiring at 11. Mark Williams still on his rookie deal at just 6.3. That's another part of this that I haven't really touched on, but like he is cost controlled for 1 more season, and then he is eligible to sign a bigger deal in 2026. But LA is going to have a lot of flexibility in that summer of 2026. You got Shake with a non-guarantee of $3 million, Bronny making 1.9, and then Trey Jemison is a 2-way guy. So that is the Lakers cap situation. So you can, Gabe and Maxey gets you to 22.5 million. You still have 2026 swap, 2028 swap. You will have access to 2032 swap after the draft. So you have 3 pick swaps. You still have your second, and I believe you'll have access to a 2032 second, if I'm not mistaken, post 2025 draft as well. So you'll have 2 seconds, 3 pick swaps, and a couple of expiring guys. Rui's also expiring. So I mean, you could do Rui and Gabe. That gets you close to 30 million. Gabe and Maxey gets you close to 22. You could also do Maxey and Rui. That gets you close to 30 as well. So Lakers are going to have a lot of flexibility with that. I don't know off the top of my head, like I haven't heard any specific names as to who they will target, but you do have optionality this summer to potentially like to reevaluate how this group looks the rest of the season. And then based on where your holes are or who underperforms or whatever, you can then make, a bigger move or as I said last night, a schmedium move probably this summer with some of the expiring guys, because they do have value as expiring guys, but still teams ultimately value the most like draft picks and younger players. Lakers are not putting young players or really like high level draft picks in any of these types of trades. So I think there's a limit to like the type of guy they could get back, but still, I think you can improve the roster, especially if it's like Gabe and Maxey keeping Rui. If you go get like maybe a better guard or something, or like a shooting guard, small forward type like that can make some sense. Next one from Brandon. Thank you for the super chat. Would you say Williams is more of an Ayton type and Kessler is more of a Lively type? I haven't watched much Hornets, possibly more of a shootout team. I would say there are some physical similarities between Williams and Ayton, but I do think there's an element like he does play relatively similar to Lively. Both are vertical lob threats. Both have a high catch radius. Both are good offensive rebounders. Both have some sneaky passing skills out of the short roll. I think from a motor perspective, I think he has a higher motor than Ayton, or at least this version of Ayton. There is like a little bit of that, like sometimes like stiffness or awkwardness, particularly on the defensive end. Like I talked about this last night, Mark Williams' athleticism translates far more on the offensive end than the defensive end. So the difference I would make between him and like Kessler's an elite rim protector, Williams is not, and Kessler uses his size in a more effective way defensively than Williams does. And Lively is much more mobile and has quicker, better lateral quickness, better hip mobility to turn the corner, keep guys in front to recover. Like Williams is a very much like if you blow by him, you are getting by him. He's not recovering. Like maybe if it's a small guard and there's enough of a runway to cover the ground with his length, he can block a shot from behind or something. But if it's more like top of the arc, he's going to close out on someone. He can get blown by like very easily, and he doesn't quite have the lateral quickness or speed or the hip mobility to quickly turn his hips, get back into the play, and recover. So again, if it's like a 6'3" guard blowing by him, that's like not a dunker. He for example, if it's like Gabe Vincent blowing by him, of course they're on the same team now, but like a Gabe Vincent type blows by him, sure, he can recover and probably block that shot. But like anyone else that can dunk or has a certain level of speed, athleticism, size, he's going to struggle like recovering on those types of guys. So I think there are elements in shades of similarities with Ayton and with Lively, but I think Lively and Kessler are on a different tier defensively. Like Kessler's on his own tier, Lively's on a lower tier, but a higher tier than Williams. Air Maxi, thank you for the super chat. Hi Buha, when do you think Williams will play for the Lakers? Also, the Lakers play today in City Edition jerseys. I hope we win despite the curse. Love from Croatia. Shout out to my Croatian brother. I've got a lot of hate from Croatia just based on the Croatia-Serbia dynamics, but I appreciate you sending some love from over there. All love to the Balkan region and the former Yugoslavia. I think Williams, I've not been told when Williams will play yet, but my read on the situation is Saturday. There's always complicating factors in terms of physicals and guys having to clear certain things, but I think he'll play likely Saturday with Luka, and it's going to be awesome for Laker fans to have both of those guys starting and making their debuts together. As for the City Edition jerseys, I think they might, like, I think tonight, I'll say this, I think tonight they break the curse. I think they get the win over the Warriors. They have tended to wear the City Edition jerseys for big games, and tonight's of course a big game just with it being the Warriors and the trade deadline, and both teams made some big splashes over the last few days. But I'll say they break the curse tonight and improve to 2-9 in those jerseys. Stephanopoulos, thank you for the super chat. Shout out to you and all the hard work you've been putting in. Love seeing your rise in this space and hope you stick with the Lakers for years to come. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. This has been awesome. I've especially going live more, because that was a big difference between this season and last season. What was last season, I rarely went live, in part because I was afraid of getting aggregated and what some of these questions I have to either not answer or be very political and careful with how I answer. But I think this season I just decided I'm going live after every game, and I'm going to kind of risk it and figure it out. And it's been so just awesome and rewarding and fulfilling. And I love the community that we're building here. But I love all of you that watch and listen on a daily and weekly basis. And yeah, I mean, it's been awesome to see the subscriber count grow, see the viewership grow, see the live viewership grow, and just continue to grow and build this all out. So I will be sticking with the Lakers for years to come. And that the plan is really to just, I said it, I want 20K was a goal of mine, just because it's a big number, but I want to hit 50K. I want to hit 100K. I want to hit 500K. I want to hit 1 million. And that's the goal here as soon as possible. But of course, realistically kind of plotting this out for longer term. So that is the plan moving forward. And I appreciate you acknowledging and shouting it out. Rolla, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, can you post more player interviews and our practice footage is possible? Lakers site is dormant. Thank you. Great work as always, and appreciate you staying up late. I can post more player interviews. To be honest, there's a bandwidth element of just post game. Really, the only two people, and now it's going to change with Luka. So the only three people I'm always there for no matter what was JJ, LeBron, and AD. Now it's JJ, LeBron, and Luka. Just because like those are the most important voices. And then sometimes it's like I have to be writing a newser. Sometimes I'm talking to someone else, either a player or a staffer or doing like, because sometimes the locker room's open and that's where LeBron and AD would talk, but then they also have guys going to the podium. Like typically whoever the other 2 to 3 players are talking that night, they go to the podium rather than speaking at their locker. So sometimes I just can't be 2 places at once, but that is a good note to know. Like I've typically only posted LeBron content because in the past I've posted other players and it just has barely gotten any views. And not that I only care about views or only do it for views, but I've just felt like if I'm going to stand there and record and not be tweeting or talking to people or working and just basically recording this, like I would ideally like for it to perform a little bit better and garner more interest. But if there is more interest overall in me posting that type of stuff, that is good to know. And I've been looking into getting a phone mic because right now I've just been using the typical one. I haven't quite found one that I like yet, but trying to figure that out to get better audio quality too, because I know that's a big thing. Jose Urena, thank you for the super chat. No question here, but I appreciate it. J1, Bones Highland, not perfect, but not bad for buyout. I would probably thank you for super chat. I would probably stay away from Bones. It just feels like he's been in 2 winning situations in Denver. Like already leaving Denver in the manner that he did and kind of like, I get the whole I want to spread my wings thing, but it's okay to attach your wings to Nikola Jokic and that situation, and they kind of took off. I mean, they were already ascending, so I don't want to say they took off after he left, but like they didn't really miss a beat when he left, and it just like from some of the reporting that came after that and some of the intel, it was like he didn't really fit with the Denver culture, and that to me, if you don't fit there, where like I know Laker fans got the history with Denver, don't like Denver, but like it's been a relatively like low maintenance, drama free like locker room culture outside. Like there's been the beef with Michael Malone and the front office, like Calvin Booth, but like from a player like locker room dynamic, it's largely been like even Russ has come in and fit in and whatever. So the fact that Bones Highland didn't fit in there is a bit of a red flag for me. And then also with the Clippers, like there were times I felt like they could have used that skill set and he was just buried on the bench and like not really getting any run. So for him to be in like 2 situations where teams are trying to go for it and he's not really fit in, that to me is a bit of a red flag. That I think this group is very tight knit, has really good chemistry, brought in some high character guys, and not to say he's not high character, but again, I think he's been in 2 winning situations and not quite been able to adapt his game, adapt his mindset, adapt his perspective and personality to like those situations. So that to me, to say nothing of his game, which I think is a bit more of that like gunner type game and not the defensive like shooting guard that they need. I have some concerns about like just him not fitting in winning environments. And I don't know if the Lakers necessarily need to take a risk on a guy who might just sulk and not be happy there. Mo Love, good vids at practice, directional mic, audio bad. So I believe you sent me an email, Mo Love, with the Rode mic. I was looking at some reviews. It seems like they were a little mixed. It had like, I think 4-star review. And typically I like to buy stuff like 4.5 and above. I know it's like a bide or quirk abide, but but I am looking into a directional mic for the phone. So and I appreciate you sending, like maybe I might just end up buying the Rode one and testing it out, but I appreciate you sending me that email. Easy peasy. Thank you for the super chat. Hearing that we slightly overpaid for Williams, who cares when you got Luka for 1 pick? Great point. And that was the point I made last night. That was a point I made earlier in the show. It's okay to overpay when you have a positional need and you're close to contending. I also think I've been clamoring for the Lakers to overpay and be aggressive and make win now moves. So you're not going to get criticism from me. Like, I think two things can be true, and we can acknowledge that it was probably a slight overpay, but it ultimately doesn't matter when you sent a message to Luka, hey, you came into Rob Pelinka's office and you asked for a big similar to Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively and Dwight Powell. Well, a few days later, we go out and trade for that big, and we invest a lot. Like, we give up a pick, a swap, and our steal from the first round to appease you. And like, I think that sets a tone for the relationship. It sends a message for the relationship, and it shows them, like, it shows Luka they're serious about contending now and in the future, but also listening to him and his input on the roster. So I think there's a lot of factors here that all lead to this. Like, again, I give the trade a B+ or A-. So I'm not knocking the trade at all. So I'm with you. Janos Sabo, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, great stuff as always. Thanks a lot for all the content you do. I do miss your behind the scenes vlogs from road games, etc. Those were cool. I did record, so I appreciate that, and that was another thing where I was posting some vlogs and they didn't do as well. So for me, I'm more the mindset of like, I like testing stuff, seeing how it does, and then if it doesn't do well, it's kind of like, okay, move on to stuff that does do well, which has been my podcast episodes and going live with you guys. So and LeBron videos always do well, but and actually Bronny too, but of course it's extension of LeBron. So like, I've been more focused on like what content is performing well, and not even from like of course there's a monetary and vanity element to like views and all that stuff, but really it's just more so like I have a full-time job as a reporter, as a writer, traveling and like traveling is almost its own full-time job. But my time, I try to be efficient with it. So I'm kind of like, hey, if I'm posting this type of content and it's not really growing or it's not really garnering the same, response from the audience as, the other content that I'm doing that is getting a good response or more engagement or whatever, then that's where I've kind of like just been like, okay, I'm going to put that stuff to the side. I will say though, I recorded a bunch of content on this past road trip. Of course, the Luka trade kind of threw a wrench in that. And then I did do content from the Luka press conference and the Clippers game. So I might be I will try to put together a couple of vlogs. I don't know if I'll be able to get it out today, but I can at least probably do the Luka one and maybe get that out tomorrow morning. Also, I will have a new episode of Buha's Block tomorrow, recapping the trade deadline with, I can spoil it now, Kranjis will be on the show, and we will be going through the Luka trade, the Mark Williams trade, where the Lakers rank in the West, and all that good stuff. So be on the lookout for that. But good to know on the behind the scenes stuff with the vlogging. And if you guys want to see more vlogging stuff, let me know, and I will do my best to show that. King Rifa _ Chifa, Jovan, what's your starting lineup? AR could be so good off the bench. Manu also think they should only shed Wood plus Maxey plus Shake in summer if no go. To the last point, I agree. I don't think, maybe if Wood's out for the season, I think you can make a case that like there's really no point in keeping him on the roster. You might as well just cut him and then maybe convert Koloko to a roster spot or sign someone or something. But like, there's no point in Wood just being a dead contract if he's not going to play. Like Maxey makes too much money to just shed him. So that's you're not going to buy him out because he's not going to agree to that, and waiving him would just be stupid, especially when he has one more year left. Shake, another one that I guess like he's healthy and he has had a couple of solid performances. So I think there's no point to cut Shake. Like it would really just be Christian Wood if he cannot return. And I've asked multiple times, other reporters have asked, every time we ask about Christian Wood, we get told no update. So make of that what you will. But I think at this point, like he's kind of an imaginary figure in the Lakers season. My starting lineup would be Mark Williams, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, Austin, and Luka. I think that I think Mark Williams, LeBron, and Luka to me are like three locks. So those guys are going to start. I think we can debate the other two positions. I lean Austin because he's their third best player. I think he's better than Mark Williams. I don't think that's a controversial take. And I just think from like an offense, like I believe Austin has earned a starting spot. And I like, sometimes I think we can overthink fit at the expense of talent and production. And you could talk me into AR off the bench and the Manu role and like the value there with that. But I think like I do believe in guys earning stuff, and to me, like Austin with really, I mean, the play throughout his career up to this point, but really like the last couple of months and just as like well as he's played, I think it's a bit of a slap in the face to get Luka and then immediately be like, well, you're off the bench. And maybe they do that. I've not heard that. So like, you know, maybe that is something that they're like, I'm sure they're at least considering potentially, you know, restructuring the starting lineup to a large extent, as I asked JJ about and as he talked about. But I took that as more of a Rui moving to the bench, DFS replacing him. So I would move Rui to the bench, make him more of a bench scorer, and start DFS because you're getting a similar level of shooting. Rui's been a better shooter this year, but it's relatively close. And DFS is a much better defensive player. He's also better at, he's done really well guarding bigs and guarding up. So I think DFS, and he's got the chemistry and relationship and you know, continuity with Luka. So the experience, like I would start DFS over Rui. I think the fit spot, you could argue AR versus Gabe. I don't think Vando makes sense because Vando and Mark Williams, I just think the spacing is too poor. And Vando's still on a minutes restriction. But I think Austin has earned a starting spot. I personally think it would be galaxy braining it to just be like, well, because of the concern about the Luka, LeBron, Austin fit and him taking a step back offensively and maybe some of the defense. Like, I think Austin deserves a shot to show what he can do off the ball and play more like he did earlier in his career, and also step up defensively and be better on that end. And if he can't do it, and the Lakers go a couple weeks and the results are up and down, and Austin doesn't look good, and maybe has like a bad plus minus, and the lineup data isn't great, I think you reevaluate that, and maybe you do make that decision. But I think he's played so well, and as a guy that they've valued, like they've clearly valued him enough to not trade him. They could have traded him and gotten another big piece if they really wanted to. They didn't. And I think with that, like, I just don't think you bench that guy. And even go back to like Dallas had its own defensive concerns with Kyrie and Luka together, right? And then in some of those matchups that they were, you know, having perimeter guys who were a little bit shaky on defensively. So they still made it work. They made the finals. They ultimately didn't beat Boston, but I think for now I would go Mark Williams, DFS LeBron, Austin, Luka, and then reevaluate in a couple weeks and see ultimately what's the best role for Austin. But I think, again, based on his play up to this point in his career, he is, I mean, dude's been averaging basically 20 and 8 for almost 2 months. Like, I get the argument for moving him to the bench, but I think in practical, like human element terms, you keep that guy in the starting lineup. And then if it doesn't work, you adjust. Kevin Selder, thank you for the super chat. In a scenario where the Luka trade doesn't happen, but AD got the big he wanted in Mark Williams, how would you evaluate that by itself? So let's say same Mark Williams trade, but AD, and you also still have Max. So then I would assume the starting lineup, I don't think that JJ would have wanted to start two bigs is the thing. I still think Mark Williams is probably a bench big, but you play like 2 shifts, 1.5 with AD and Mark Williams together for like 4 to 6 minutes or so, 4 to 7, 5 to 7 minutes, whatever. So like, 10 to 14 minutes a game with those two together. And then Mark Williams gets a couple shifts by himself. So I would say in that scenario, AD, LeBron, I think DFS is what was eventually going to replace Rui in the starting lineup. So we'll go with that. AD, LeBron, DFS, Austin, Max. And then your bench is then Rui, Mark Williams, Vando, Gabe, and you traded Dalton, but unless there's someone I'm missing, like I guess Jackson is kind of the 10th guy, although you have 3 centers in that scenario. I mean, it's basically, would you rather have Luka and Jackson or AD and Max in your top 9? And you could technically argue AD and Max, they're the better duo, but I still come back to like the long-term view of the Luka trade. He's 6 years younger than AD. He's going, like, barring him really getting out of shape or getting injured, he's going to be better than AD for the next 6 years in each season. And I think at the highest levels, like, top end talent matters. And in a potential series against OKC or Denver or Boston or Cleveland, I'm more confident in Luka outplaying Jokic, outplaying Shea, outplaying Tatum, outplaying Mitchell than I am in AD doing it. And it's no shade at AD. I think he's a great 1B or number 2. Luka is a 1A or just a 1. And LeBron has obviously been a 1 throughout his whole career. I think now, might be a little bit like maybe he's a 1A or 1B, but like upgrading the AD spot to Luka from just a talent, production, impact perspective, I think that was the right move. So I get, again, this is why when they first made the trade, I said there's a chance that like in the short term they potentially take like a slight step back, because I think Max is a big swing piece here, where I think Max has been their 4th best player. It's between him and DFS for like the past, like post DFS trade. I think it's been between Max and DFS for like who's the 4th best player. Statistically, you can make the case for Max, and like he's been kind of their 4th option, and he was really good in that role. So from that perspective, like if we're saying like the top 7 are the same, and it really comes down to like Luka and Jackson versus AD and Max, I do lean like slightly more on the AD backside, because I think there's a giant gap between Max and Jackson. But overall, I think you always had to make the Luka trade. Like, that's not one to overthink or to regret. And the Lakers are just set up in such a better position financially, talent-wise. The future is much brighter. And you could argue the present is brighter too, because of how great Luka is. Like, he is the type of guy that you give him a competent supporting cast, he has a shot against anybody in a series. And you're giving him a competent supporting cast with LeBron, with Austin, with Mark Williams, with DFS, with Rui, with Vando, with Gabe. Like, you're giving him that supporting cast. So I think, again, you can make a case that if they still did the Mark Williams trade, but the thing is, I don't even know if they do the Mark Williams trade still, because I don't know that they'd want to give up Dalton, a first, and a swap to get a big that JJ might not even start. So I think they probably aim a little bit lower and maybe do like 2 separate moves and go get another perimeter guy or something, and maybe they end up trading like 1 pick and second and a swap or something. But I think it would have been potentially smaller, and they probably still would have gotten a center. But I don't know if they go all in. Like, they went all in on Mark Williams because Luka wanted them to, and because they needed a center desperately. That was not necessarily the case prior, right? Like, they needed a center, but you didn't need to overpay potentially or slightly, whatever, and like give up as much as they did to get a Mark Williams type. So that, I'm trying to entertain the hypothetical here, and I get what you're getting at, but there's no scenario in which I think you don't do the Luka trade. Like, that was a grand slam trade. Gabriel, should be the priority in the offseason with the MLE. I also thought they'd swoop in for T-Man at the last second, which would have been hilarious. I would have loved Terrence Mann on this team. And to your point, like, it would have been hilarious, and he would have been a perfect fit at that backup shooting guard position. And I think could have given Gabe a real shot for like that backup guard position. I love Nah. I think he'd be a great fit with Luka and LeBron and just around those guys. So I agree with you. Homie _33. Miles Turner would be great at playing Russian roulette. Do you think Luka and Mark will play on Saturday? I will be there. Would love to hit you up. hit me up, and you can either email me at jbuha@theathletic.com or hit me up on X, or you could IG DM me. People have been actually DMing me a lot on IG and getting my attention that way. So if you just, at Jovan Buha on Instagram, that's probably the best way. I'm more open to DMs there than on X, where it just gets super toxic and super negative. Yeah, Miles Turner, dude has 9 lives in Indiana. I've not heard for sure yet. The Lakers are tentatively targeting Luka for the goal is to play Saturday. Mark, they still have to make the trade official, and he has to pass his physical and stuff. But assuming he does that, I think Saturday is realistic. So I would expect tentatively both guys to play on Saturday. But with Luka, he still has to practice again. They're going to see how he feels on Saturday before making that call. With Mark, I think I'd honestly say Mark's probably more likely, just because Luka still has the injury that he's dealing with. Mark is healthy and should be cleared and in LA before then. So I would actually say Mark's probably slightly more likely, but I think both play. BG, yo, hey Jovan, potential buyout option to look for Jaden Springer, young POA defender, only 22, can fit now with the future. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, so I touched on him earlier in the show. I was asked about him, and I like Jaden Springer. To your point, he's young. He's a point of attack defender. He's already got multiple years in the league. He's also a former Celtics, so you can kind of stick it to the Celtics, and that's another thing that I'm sure the Lakers would love to do. So I would like to have the full picture of the buyout market to like make the ultimate call, but I do like him. Arthur Johnson, thank you for the super chat. From the padlocked dog pound to the Charlotte impound, we now know why Cam never got run. Still hurt for Dalton. LA has no patience for youth development. The one thing I'll say on the Dalton front that I've made this point since last night, like Mark Williams is 8 months younger than Dalton. So you could, not even you could make the argument, I will make the argument that Mark Williams fits on the exact, like you did not timeline jump. Like, sure, he's a first year player versus a third year player, but you did not timeline jump from going from Dalton Connect to Mark Williams. You're on the same timeline. If anything, you have more time, and he's just a much better player currently than Dalton Connect is. So like, he's a better player in the present. And while Dalton could become a good player in the future, I think he has a ways to go, especially defensively, but also even in his ability to get open and consistently shoot the ball. That like Mark Williams, I think has some significant work to do defensively, but the outline of a good player is already there, and he's already putting up good numbers. Dalton Connect is a ways away from being that type of player. So I think if Mark Williams was 27, 29, I would agree more with this. Now, the last point, no patience for youth development. It's tough to have it both ways, because I feel like the Lakers have gotten criticism in both directions here, where at times it's been, well, give up the picks, make the trades, like go for it. And then it's also been, well, they never keep the young guys, they never develop them. And I just like, it's hard to do both, right? Like famously now, the Warriors tried to do the whole 2 timeline thing, and they did get a championship, but outside of that, it's been a lot of mediocrity, and they're kind of in a weird position of like what the Steph era is going to end as. I think the Lakers, for example, like the Lakers are in a much better situation than the Warriors are. And the Warriors just traded for Jimmy Butler, a star who is 10 years older than Luka, just gave him a 2-year, $121 million extension, paying that dude 60 plus million when he has now forced his way out of multiple teams, has been a major distraction, also has an extensive injury history. And like, you're not sure which way the Steph era is going to go, which way it's going to end. The Lakers are in a much better position where I think they have a better roster currently. LeBron has been better than Steph, and you have the star of the future, the next face of the franchise, and like you can gracefully transition into the next era. So I hear you. I think ideally, especially Max could have been a guy or should have been a guy that they kept. But if if keeping Max would have meant Dalton was in the trade or an extra pick was in the trade, and then you couldn't make the Mark Williams trade, and now you're either starting Jackson or you're going for a Valanciunas or like some type of Andre Drummond, like lesser big. I think you can make the case that like Max and that additional big might not be as valuable as Mark Williams within the context of what this roster looks like, because they really needed this type of center, and Luka really wanted this type of center, and I don't think that should be overlooked. So I do hear the criticism, and I agree with it to an extent, but I think again, Mark Williams is younger than Dalton by almost a year. He's already a better player than Dalton, and the Lakers, like, they kind of had to pick a path, and they picked the win now path, and I think you could make the case like that's what makes the most sense. And it also sends a message to Luka that, like, one, we have an opportunity to contend because championship windows can be fleeting. We don't know how long LeBron is going to play. We don't know how long he's going to be a Laker. And the fact that they were able to put a competent supporting cast around Luka and LeBron and reshape this thing, like, I think that's a move you got to, like, those are the moves you got to make 10 out of 10 times. And for this group, like, if you're prioritizing Max and Dalton and keeping your picks or keeping your young players, like, you're not contending. Like, it's just, you got to pick one or the other. You either are going for it and you're making some more, short-sighted moves, more win now moves and trying to win a championship, or you're standing pat, keeping those young guys, keeping those picks, and you're not. And you're hoping to do that in 2027, 2028, 2029. But LeBron might not be in the league then. He might not be a Laker then. Luka is going to be then in his late 20s, and like, he should be in his prime, but you don't know. Like, there is obviously some risk in, like, how could he age or what that's going to look like. So right now you have a top 3 player and LeBron playing as a top 10 guy, like, go for it. And I think that's what the Lakers did. And I think that was the right call. Douglas Mossman, thank you for the super chat. Any concern with Bron not being able to vibe with Luka and the rest of the team compared to AD, who is much closer in age to Bron, team so young now? LeBron, if you go, like, walk into that locker room, LeBron is like a giant teenager. He's a balding teenager with a beard, with some gray in it, right? Like, I think LeBron and Luka will get along fine. Are they going to be as close as LeBron and AD were? Who knows? It's possible. It's also possible that, I mean, LeBron and AD shared an agency. They won a championship together. They worked together for 5.5 seasons. Like, it's kind of hard to compare that dynamic, that relationship with what Luka is now stepping into. But I think they see the game. Like, Luka can relate to LeBron in a different way than AD can in terms of the way, like, playing style, skill set, like supercomputer, just their basketball IQ, their court vision. These are two guys that see the game at a level that very few players have ever seen the game and ever will see the game. And that alone, like, from the basketball nerd side, the mind the game side of LeBron, I think is going to love playing with Luka, working with Luka, game planning with Luka, like playoff strategy with Luka. I think LeBron's going to love that. I think Luka's going to love that. I think like when you have two savants, like, of course there's always some risk that they clash and they don't see eye to eye, but I think these two guys legitimately see eye to eye. LeBron has said Luka is his favorite player in the league to watch. Luka has said he grew up idolizing LeBron. He still looks up to LeBron. So I think, of course, that there's always some risk when you put two stars, two alphas together, that they don't end up working out. But I think these two guys are going to, like, have a lot more in common than it might look like on the outside. And despite the one being 25, one being 40, I think LeBron can relate to Luka and help shape and guide him as he hits his prime. And then for Luka, I think there's going to be an element of just like being in awe of being around LeBron, playing with LeBron, two bad game with LeBron, like all that stuff. I think that's going to be awesome to him as the guy that was like his favorite player growing up. So there's certainly a chance that they don't like completely vibe, but I think they will. And LeBron still runs the locker room. So like, even if it is, if anything, like I think it keeps LeBron young and energetic, and like kind of it gives him energy having younger players, especially if they're competent and can play, which the Lakers have 8 to 9 of those guys. Bruce, thank you for the super chat. Just as a heads up, I'm going to go about an hour and a half here, so I will be wrapping in about 20 minutes. I do have to start getting ready to go to crypto.com for the Lakers Warriors game. Bruce says, can't wait for the Netflix on the Luka trade. Ainge probably refused to deal Kessler after what Pelinka did. Quote, thanks, by the way, this is to help us get Luka. I would love to see any of the behind the scenes. I don't think there's going to, maybe there was a camera on Luka when this all happened. I don't know. But I wouldn't be, like, he said he was about to go to sleep when this whole situation happened. So I would assume that was not the case, but it will be interesting. Like, this is gonna be a 30 for 30 one day, is this whole trade, this whole situation. But yeah, Danny Ainge got swindled. Then they waived JHS. Darren FRM985, thank you for the super chat. With the influx of offense, as long as we're middle of the pack defensively, I think we have conference finals ceiling right now. I agree. I said last night, I think the Lakers right now, I would peg them as, like, in terms of, like, floor is maybe an aggressive term, but I would peg them right now as, like, a conference semifinals or finals team. I think depending on how, like I said, I think if OKC and Denver on the other side of the bracket, I would pick them to at least make the conference finals. I think Houston and Memphis, Lakers have the 2 best players on the floor in that series. And like they've always played Memphis well. Granted, AD was a big part of that. Houston, I think LA matches up a little bit better on the perimeter now. Dallas is an interesting one with AD and Kyrie and Clay and PJ Washington, Lively, Gafford, etc. They're going to be big. They're going to be good defensively, but I'm not quite sure they have. I mean, Dallas is good, but I do think I would put the Lakers slightly ahead of them. Then it's like the Clippers, the Suns, the Timberwolves. I think the Warriors. Like, I just think the Lakers are above those teams. So I think that the top 6 in the West, to me, in no particular order, but loosely: Thunder, Nuggets, Lakers, Grizzlies, maybe Mavericks, actually. I'd say Mavericks, Grizzlies, Rockets, and then I think the Warriors are probably number 7. That's my top 7 in the West. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. Fate of the world on the line. Who joins via buyout? If they waive Maxey, are they able to sign Bruce, Simmons, etc.? Good stuff, Jovan. Keep it up. So no on the waiving Maxey, because he still has another year left and it's guaranteed. So that would not work. And waiving a player, it'd have to be a buyout with Maxey. He'd have to take less. That's not going to happen. And so if they waived him, it would still count on the cap, but they'd have the flexibility to go sign someone. So they would still be a first apron team. That they can't get Bruce or Simmons. Fate of the world. That's tough, man. You're putting a lot of I don't want all you great people to disintegrate in like a Thanos snap, right? That's tough. I'm gonna check my text, make sure I didn't. Yeah, okay. One person just texted me saying they think they're gonna wait. So do make of that what you will. I think I mean I made that point earlier. Like, I think the Lakers are gonna be patient and really assess. Like, there's no rush to add this player. And it could be a free agent like a Lonnie Walker or Dennis Smith, but it could also be a buyout guy like a Springer or a Richardson or something. So I think they're going to be patient and assess it. I guess I'm also trying to think about like who JJ potentially has. I mean, JJ loves this. Like, prior to joining the Lakers, loved Missoula and the Celtics, and his kids are Celtics fans. So maybe there's some Springer fondness there. I would say Springer or Richardson to me seem to be the top 2 buyout guys right now for like what the Lakers need. So I might say Springer if I had to bet, but I don't want you guys to disappear. So now I hope it happens. Okay, getting back into the chat. Mario Dawson says, I think the Lakers need another two-way player. I agree. Like I said, I think the player ideally is a decent shooter and a decent defender. Like ideally more solid on one side, like either a solid shooter, decent defender, decent shooter, solid defender, but they could use another perimeter guy like that. Blasty, do you think it's weird the Lakers haven't posted Mark Williams yet? The trade has not been made like official yet. That's the reason why. Greg Noble says, I can't think of anything Rob did wrong. Even that 3/4 sleeve jacket, leather jacket is growing on me. I like the jacket. I'm probably the minority. I know he got made fun of online. I like the jacket. Yeah, I mean, again, like I think you could argue, as I've said now countless times, like Dalton, a first and a swap is probably a little bit too much for Williams. But when you factor in, you had those assets because of the Luka trade and because you didn't give them up and you negotiated them in the Luka trade to keep and then go get a Mark Williams type. Like if we, I mean, you could flip it. Like let's just say for argument's sake, take the pick out, take the swap out, put it in the Luka trade, and you still do the Luka trade, and the Lakers still win the Luka trade. And if it's 80 max, 2 firsts, a swap, they still won the trade. It's still a trade you make. And then you could look at it like, oh, Dalton and Cam for Mark Williams, right? Like, so sometimes like that was the thing with the whole Kawhi PG trade package that you know the Clippers would say whenever, and I think there's some validity to it, like because people look at the Paul George package and they're like, well, they gave up Shea and they gave up all these picks, and like, yes, but the part that doesn't show up on the graphic with the Paul George package was agreeing to that trade secured the Clippers getting Kawhi Leonard. So really it needs to be like put in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and then look at all they gave up. And you could still argue that it was too much, but it's at least like the context needs to be there. So I would say for the Lakers in this scenario, that even if you want to argue that they overpaid, the only reason they were able to overpay or even get Mark Williams in the first place was because of the job Rob did negotiating with Nico Harrison in the Luka trade and the ability to keep Dalton out, to keep an extra pick, to keep an extra swap, and basically give up as little as possible as he could have for Luka. And that benefited the Lakers in allowing them to then have the assets to go get a Mark Williams. And again, kind of afford to because when you underpay in one deal, you can afford to overpay in another one. And again, the Lakers needed Mark Williams. They needed a better center. So this was a roundabout way of agreeing with you and saying that I don't think Rob did anything wrong. And even if you want to criticize the price of the trade, I still think you had to do it. Super chat from my mom says, keep an eye on the time. That's a very valuable info from my mom, or advice. So I will, got about 10 minutes left. Notorious CRG, thank you for the super chat. Is Euro Walker the fourth a realistic option at all? I think he's an option. I do think the defense might leave a little bit to be desired, and that might ultimately be the reason why if they don't sign him, they don't sign him. But they could use another scorer, another downhill guy, and just a guy who could get some buckets, because like looking at the two lineups right now, like the starters are much more offensive minded. The bench is much more defensive minded. Lonnie could come in and be like that kind of bench microwave guy that they might need, especially now that they traded Dalton. So I'm open to Lonnie, but I think ultimately the defense might be a limiting factor for him. Britton, thank you for the super chat. Fun question. Are you / were you into video games? If so, do you play 2K, and what's your favorite video game in general? So I did actually, the reason why the late night gang exists and I was a night owl and am a night owl is because of video games. And in high school, I had a TV and an Xbox in my room. And most nights I'd stay up till 1, 2, 3 a.m. playing video games all night. And, you know, I was playing basketball. I was getting good grades, but I was not getting much sleep. And it was a lot of late nights playing video games. So big Gears of War guy. That was my game. It was like 2K and Gears of War. Like those were the two games I would play. And was obsessed with, if you guys remember achievements, and there's the achievement seriously where you killed 10,000 people in your online play, and like, but you often had to go way above it and to get the achievement. So I had to kill like 14,000 people or something to get it. So that's an aside, but Gears of War was a big one for me. Now I don't really play video games as much. My son likes Fortnite and Minecraft, so I've played those a little bit with him, and more so Fortnite. But outside of that, like I don't really like. It's typically working, being on here, or maybe watching a movie or streaming something with my wife. Like I live a pretty simple life in that regard of basically just working and occasionally like watching stuff. Jerry Soriano, your lender for life. Again, the best PR in the game. Thank you for the super chat. Can the Lakers stretch players to get under first apron? My understanding is no, because they are still about, I think they're about like 8 million or so, 8.5. I have to double check, above the first apron. And so even if you stretched Shake and Christian, that's not enough. It would have to be Maxey, but Maxey still has another year. So maybe it gets close if you stretch him. I have not heard that as an option. I would probably have to check with some Lakers people and maybe some Cat people, but I don't believe so. But I'm not saying no for sure. It might be a possibility. 23 beats. Thank you for the super chat. I think we could have gotten a couple first round picks for you, Jovan. I'm surprised that we didn't explore that option before the deadline. You know, I'm always available for a 10-day. I promise I will not let the Lakers shooting curse affect me, and I will shoot an above average 3-point percentage out there. But in all seriousness, yeah, I'm open for a 2-way contract, the 15th roster spot, whatever. As long as the check clears. Goody Joy says Mark Williams is injured and has never played a whole NBA season. He's not injured currently, but he is injury prone, and he has never played a whole NBA season. And that's the risk. And that's the biggest risk in this trade for the Lakers is can he stay healthy? But I think from an upside perspective, there's clear upside there. Jay Renrick, if Kleba is ruled out for the year, does it affect our cap status this year? No, it wouldn't affect that. I mean, he's still just like his contracts. I don't know. My mic is 1 second here. Don't want this to fall off. No, it doesn't. Denny third, are you back to playing ball post injury? I just played basketball for the first time a couple weeks ago, or for the second time. Like one time this is my, sometimes I try to think of myself as like a logical, reasonable person, but I played a few months ago, like right before the season, around the 1 year mark of my, for those who don't know, context here, I tore my Achilles last year, beginning of the 2023-24 season. And I just am now like fully recovered and starting to play basketball again. But a few months ago, like right before the season, I played in Santa Monica with some friends on the like beach court. Probably not the best idea to be playing on a slippery outdoor court with sand on it. So that one was like very low intensity for me. I was like, I'm basically not going to jump for rebounds. I'm not going to jump to contest anything. I'm basically going to shoot, post up, and like collect uncontested rebounds. And even then, I'm like not really going to jump. I'm just going to stick my arms up. 2 weeks ago, or roughly like right before the Grammy trip, I played for like 2 hours in a run that I used to play in, and that was nice. Like the first 30 minutes, it was a bit uncomfortable. I was winded. I was not myself. And then like from 30 minutes to the 2 hour mark, that's when I started to feel like myself, and I started making shots and playing much better. So I want to be careful with how much I play, just because tearing your Achilles, 10 out of 10, do not recommend. It was probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me, certainly physically. And just like I had to shower in a chair, and it was just a disaster. Couldn't travel for a bit, missed like a month of travel, missed 2 weeks of work. Like it was just awful all around. So I got to be careful with it. As far as height, we'll say about 6'6". And dunking is not, so McDonald Gibson, 6'5", 6'6". I would say with shoes, 6'6". Mr. TDS, post player. I have hook shot. I was a post player in high school, and then I've since transitioned my game into being more of a shooter. So I've kind of become more of a catch and shoot guy. Offensive rebounds, putbacks, can post up smaller. Like sometimes if you want to put a smaller guy on me, I could post up. So actually in the prior run, I was the tallest guy there, so I was posting up a lot. But I would say I used to be an enforcer. I've talked about that before, but I'd get a lot of like flagrants and technicals. Not dunking anymore, especially after the Achilles. Art of War says he was standing next to DFS. They're about the same height. Yeah, he's a little bit taller than me, but we're pretty close in height. Homie _33 Jovan, what's your sleeping schedule like the last few days? I have not slept more than I've probably not slept more than like 5.5 hours any night of the past week, and that's like on the high side. There's been like the Luka trade night, I stayed up till 7 and I slept 3 hours that night. Last night I slept probably 4 hours, 4.5, 4. So yeah, the sleep has not been there. Jay says seated calf raises Jovan. I promise it's a game changer. I'll share a funny story for you guys. I'm seeing in the chat we're talking about my hops. I do have the Serbian hops. I will say, but so I've never been a high flyer. I will say that I've been more of a ground bound skill based guy. If you guys want to talk about the hops, but so quick story. I was going to write a story last year on tearing my Achilles and talking to other players that have torn it. So like beginning of the season, actually right after I tore it, I the next day was Lakers Suns final preseason game, and I went out to Palm Springs to cover it with the torn Achilles, walking in a boot. Kind of just gutting through it. And I went and talked to KD about it. And KD gave me some advice. And his first advice was like, just get off your foot right now. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be walking on it. Like, go rest. Go take some time away. So I took that to heart. But then later in the season, after I had recovered, I was at a Warriors game and wanted to talk to Klay Thompson about it. So Klay walks out of the locker room. And like I was talking to Warriors PR, they're arguably the best in the business. And Klay like walks, like kind of beelines out of the locker room, and they stop him and they're like, hey, like, this reporter wants to talk to you about the story he's working on with he tore his Achilles. And then Klay's like immediate reaction is like, he tore his Achilles? Like what? Like he thought it happened right then at the game. So he started like freaking out. And then they're like, no. Like he tore it months ago. He's recovering. Like he's here, blah, blah, blah. So then I meet with Klay in the hallway outside of the Warriors locker room, and we start, and he's like, he just has a great personality. He's like, man, like that sucks. Like it's the worst thing, isn't it? Like da da da. And he starts like giving me advice and this and that. So and then he's like, all you got to do is seated calf raises. And he's like, here, I'll show you. And so the Warriors practice court is right next to the locker room and that hallway. And there's a curtain there. And he just pulls the curtain back. And all of a sudden, the Warriors weight room is right there. And he's like, come here. And then he walks over to the seated calf raises machine. And I'm kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because technically that's like not where you're supposed to be as media. Like that's not just open. And then Warriors PR is like freaking out, like they don't really know what to do, but it's Clay, and like everybody just loves Clay. So I follow him, and then he goes in and sits at the seated calf raise machine and just starts doing seated calf raises. And this is all, he was supposed to go talk to the media after that. And this is all in between him leaving the locker room and him going to do his availability. So that was like a 5-minute conversation interaction that was just awesome, because it just, to me, like I'd heard so many Clay stories throughout the years, and like that was Clay in a nutshell. Like he just didn't care about doing media, didn't care about, like he was like, yo, let me take you back here and let me show you like what to do. So shout out to Clay for that one. The notorious CRG says, thank you for super chat. Cardio Jovan will soon morph into Miami Jovan. Am I going to ask out and get suspended? And I'm not quite sure what the Miami Jovan is in relation to, but I will take it if it's a compliment. Art of War says Buha is about AR's height. I think I'm a little taller, but yeah, we're similar. Ray says he's half Serbian, half Puerto Rican. Correct. Peter says I'm a Serbian guy that was dunking at 5'10" in high school. So I used to be able. I've never been like a great dunker, but like I used to be able to like cleanly dunk, but like still like not never had a high vertical. But now aging, I'm 32. Toward Achilles, I'm not even trying to dunk anymore. But shout out to you. I mean, 5'10" dunking, that's impressive. Logan Walters, can we sign Buha? We need a lengthy guard. I promise I will shoot well and I will foul hard. John Drake, as good as, I think for the super chat, as good as Rob did, I don't understand keeping Woods, Hayes, Kleba, a second and 2 pick swaps, finishing off the deadline with Sharp and 2 open roster spots to get a point of attack guard would have been perfect. My understanding is the Lakers tried. And as I said last night, like, I think their draft assets looked better on paper than they actually were. The second round pick right now is projected to be 53rd. And that's before factoring in the Lakers could be better moving forward and be like a mid to high 50s pick, which is basically useless. Like no one it cares about a pick in the 50s. The pick swaps, 2026 is a draft away, right? Like, or a year and a half away. Lakers should be pretty good next season. So I don't think that pick swap had a lot of value. The one pick swap you could argue had value was 2028, but even then, Luka is going to be 28 years old. Lakers should still be good. They could potentially have the next post LeBron star and have Luka plus that player. So I think ultimately it came down to like teams just looking at those contracts. The Kleba one still has another year left. I think it would have been different if he was expiring, but he has one more year left. And ultimately, I don't think the draft capital was enough. I think if the Lakers could have done, like, I hear where you're coming from, but I think based on Rob giving up as many assets as he did and going all in the way that he did, I think if they could have done something else, they would have. I don't think this was a matter of like them resting on their laurels or like not caring. L.A. says, Jovan, how come you never published that story? I kind of dropped the ball on it, to be completely honest. And there was so much stuff last year, especially with like, it was it was more something I was trying to work on like second half of the season, but then we had all the Darvin stuff and just kind of the chaos with the way the season ended. And then I got kind of distracted with like Darvin firing, coaching search, JJ, Summer, Bronny, all that stuff. Like it kind of just the Lakers beat is like a train that never stops. So I do kind of regret not writing it, but I shared it. Shared it now. Quinn Thompson, any news on Williams' availability? I have not heard anything from Lakers PR yet. I'm going to assume he talks at practice tomorrow and they do a small thing. They're not going to do a big ceremony like the Luka thing, but yeah. Crenshaw Grinder with the Nets centers available. Daron Sharp was available, but I'm going to guess the Lakers second round pick was just not enough. I passed the 5 or the 130 mark. Quinn Thompson, thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question. Lakers lifestyle, thank you for the super chat. Janos is calling me old in here, man. The heck? 32. That's still young. I mean, I also for me it's like I have no facial hair basically. So I always look younger. Liberty, Jovan, do you think this team is a championship? This is a championship lineup / contender right now? Yes, I do. I think you can make a case for the Lakers being arguably the 4th best team in the league and arguably the 2nd best team in the West. So I have them at minimum top 6. So yeah, I think they're I would put them as a tier 2 contender right now, but not but they have a shot to win it all. The Art of War, are you good friends with John Ireland, Buha? I wouldn't say good friends, but we are friendly. We typically chat, say what's up, chat for a little bit at each game. C2 Cents got a nice shout out from JJ Buha. I did yesterday. I asked him an offensive question, then he followed it up and referenced it again. Joe Little, any news on the buyout market? No news. Other than the Lakers are going to be patient and they're looking for a shooting guard. Adrian, what is the peak comparison for Williams? That's an interesting one. I'm trying to think of like a high flying, like the weird thing with Williams is like most of the guys who have his skill set are typically better defensively. So that's like a weird, like offensively, I think he could, it's not any like DeAndre Jordan was more athletic, but I think he could be like that type of DeAndre Jordan, Tyson Chandler force offensively of like just a sturdy lob threat, rim runner, pick and roll guy for like a championship level or like really good team. I think you could also argue he's got even more touch and he has expanded his range out a little bit where he can hit some mid-range jumpers. It's not something he does consistently, but that is in his arsenal. I don't know, but like the problem is defensively, DeAndre and Tyson Chandler are in a different tier. So it's hard to kind of, I'm trying to think of like, I know some people have thrown around the all-star word. I don't quite see all-star potential. I think that's a little bit too high for him, but I don't know. I guess like this is a weird comparison because they're totally different players, but like I think he could be, and I might undermine my own argument right here, but like I think he could be like a Nikola Vucevic type in terms of like good offensive center who puts up 16 to 20 points a night, good rebounder. And then I think his defensive ceiling is higher than Vucevic's, but like that type of big, maybe like it's from a skill set and playing style perspective, they're totally different. And I'm talking more about like the Orlando Vucevic, maybe like early Chicago. I mean, he's a far better shooter. Like it's an imperfect comparison. I'm not trying to say like they play the same. I'm trying to say like the caliber of player that they are, if that makes sense. Like from a playing style, I think he's more the Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan type. but he's just not the level of defender. So that's where Vucevic is like, I mean, Vucevic was basically a 18 to 20 and 10 guy for most of his career, but was just a subpar defender, and now has really slipped defensively. So that's kind of what I could equate. He is a 2-time All-Star though, and that's where like I'm undermining my own argument because I don't think Williams is going to be an All-Star, but like kind of along those lines. Yano says he was laughing at me saying I'm aging at 32. Okay, that's fair. The notorious CRG, before Gabe Vincent started getting a shot back, he was called Cardio Gabe for just running up and down the court. Fair. Okay, that reference went over my head, but I get what you're saying now. Greg Noble says, Jovan, when healthy, Maxey is our second or third best center. I think Maxey is the Lakers' second best center, and I think he'd be a great fit on this team when healthy. Adrian, is Williams just a better McGee in a couple of years? No, because I'm gonna pull it up. Like there is some McGee in terms of his defense. That's actually not a bad comparison defensively in terms of he can block shots, but like it doesn't quite translate. JaVale McGee's best offensive season, 12 points a game. His best rebounding season, 8 rebounds per game. He's obviously had multiple seasons averaging 2+ blocks, but Mark Williams is averaging 16 and 10. So Mark Williams is at a higher level. L.A. Jovan, JJ has a reputation for being arrogant. Is it more arrogance or confidence? I think it's more confidence. Art of War says Andrew Bynum. I could see the Andrew Bynum comparisons. I do think Bynum was bigger from like a strength and weight comparison and a better defender. He was slow, but I think he's a better defender. But I'm seeing some Bynum. I don't mind that. Jet, I'm not sure if you're referring to me saying Vucevic or Bynum, but he says that's actually a good comparison. Solid offense with suspect defense. I see DeAndre. Mr. TD says, so basically a tier below an all-star. Yeah, I would say that, but really good. Greg Noble says a young Drummond. I could also see that. I do have to, it's a wrap. So I'm going to go through the final. Looks like I got one more super chat. Then I'm going to wrap here. Black Trevor Layan. Okay. What a name to close this. Thank you for the super chat. Says, is Wood done for the year or what? Again, I said it a little bit earlier. Like anytime we ask about, I've asked about Wood multiple times. Other people have asked about Wood. We keep getting told no update. So I would not plan on Christian Wood being a big part of this group moving forward. And that's where potentially waiving him comes into play. So that's what I would say on that front. But, all right, I'm going to wrap here, though. I have to get ready for the Lakers-Warriors game, which I will be going live after. And yeah, I will. Someone asked if I could talk to Wood. I can ask him. He's typically kind of not in the locker room when we're in there, but I have seen him. I just at this point, I maybe that's the most direct way to go with all this. But I'm gonna wrap here. I appreciate you all for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tonight after the Lakers-Warriors game to react to the game, to react to JJ and LeBron speaking about Mark Williams and the trade deadline, and just kind of the post deadline Lakers. So we'll have updates on that. We'll have updates on Lakers Warriors, and we'll see if they can break the City Edition curse tonight. They got the good juju with the trades and the direction of the group. We'll see if that could offset the curse of the City Edition jerseys. But I will be back in roughly 8 hours or so. So I will talk to you all then.